At around 10 p.m. on February 7, 2018, near the town of Kashem, Syria, Wagner's troops made the mistake of their lives by attacking an outpost which was being protected by America's most elite soldiers. The Russian mercenaries were assigned to support pro-government forces which were going to attack the outpost that was located at the Kanako oil and gas field, which was being protected by the Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. Their objective to capture an oil field in eastern Syria was supposed to be a walk in the park. What the Russian mercenaries didn't know was that the oil field was not only defended by the SDF, but also the American Special Operations. So within a few minutes, the routine mission turned into hell on earth and into one of the deadliest engagements for the notorious Russian mercenary group Wagner. The outpost that the US Special Forces were supporting was 5 miles east of the agreed-upon Euphrates River, which was strategically important to both sides. To prevent an accidental fight between Russian and US-backed groups, they set up a line along the Euphrates River in Syria. They also had special phones to talk to each other, but despite this, on February 7th, close to the Euphrates River, Russians and Americans had a deadly clash, the first since the Cold War. Even though this oil field was supposed to be on the side of the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Syrian-Russian troops attacked it. On the night of February 7, the silence of the Syrian desert was shattered by the roar of engines and the terrifying rumble of artillery. A formidable force, including Syrian troops and Wagner Group mercenaries, initiated a coordinated assault on the isolated outpost near Kashem. Their goal was to seize control of the Kanako oil and gas field. At 3 p.m., the Russian-led force began to gather near the refinery, and by early evening, more than 500 troops and 27 vehicles, including tanks and armored personnel carriers, were in position. Russian Air Force planes were ready to help but stayed on the ground at first. Suddenly, without warning, the Wagner fighters launched their attack at around 10 p.m. on February 7. They began by shelling out outposts with artillery. Not only the Syrian Democratic Forces were under heavy fire, but also their American allies, like the Green Berets, Army Rangers, Marines, and other support units. The US Special Forces and their SDF allies found themselves in a perilous situation, outnumbered and outgunned. They weren't expecting someone with D-30 towed howitzers and BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launchers to attack their position. Yet, they were determined to stand their ground and protect the Kanako oil and gas fields at all costs. However, a phone call from the US base near the Euphrates would have changed the whole story of this occasion. One of the commanders called the Russian headquarters near the Euphrates, asking if Russian troops were trying to take the base at the Kanaka oil fields. The Russian commander cleared that there are no Russian soldiers included. It was clear for the Americans to teach those guys who were attacking them a good lesson. The American military acted quickly and ambushed the attackers even before they could start their full-scale attack. They destroyed the first and last vehicles in the convoy, trapping the attackers in the middle. An American drone had been tracking the convoy and fired missiles at them, but to the Russian Wagner mercenaries on the ground, the drone was invisible and they didn't know where the attack was coming from. More shells hit them, causing chaos. American artillery and rocket launchers also hurt the attackers, while the Russian forces were still figuring out what was happening. 4 helicopters appeared and they had precise vision even from far away. They used guided missiles to hit Russian tanks, and their cannon made the enemy infantry run away. Some managed to escape, but many were hurt, and one Russian survivor said about 200 of them were hurt or killed in just a few minutes, almost half of their group. Out of all vehicles, only 1 tank survived and 1 BRDM after the attack. All other BRDMs and tanks were destroyed in the first minutes of the fight, right away. One of the Wagner's commanders who led the attack mentioned. Large bombers completely destroyed the convoy. The survivors hid in buildings, but that didn't keep them safe. Throughout the night, fighter jets hunted the attackers and their bombs went through cover. The Russian contractors couldn't do anything against the American Air Force. Even though there were rumors that some Russian pilots wanted to take off in their planes, the Russian planes stayed on the ground. The Russian commander eventually called for a stop to the fighting. When it was over, there was almost nothing left of the convoy except for one tank and an armored vehicle. At least 200 of the roughly 500 Russian and Syrian attackers were hurt or killed. Some places had melted sand and bent gun barrels from the fighting. On the American side, no one was hurt and their planes were fine. Only one person from the Syrian Democratic Forces at the oilfield base was hurt by Russian fire, but they survived. After the conflict ended, audio recordings from the Russian radios were leaked and translated, and the commanders of the Wagner who led the action were aware that they were completely destroyed.
Well, you know, about Syria and the 25 people that are wounded there from the Syrian army. Well, to make it short, we've had our ass kicked. So one squadron lost 200 people right away, another one lost 10 people, and I don't know about the third squadron, but it got torn up pretty badly too. So 3 squadrons took a beating. The Yankees attacked. First they blasted the out of us by artillery, and then they took 4 helicopters up and pushed us in a merry-go-round with the heavy caliber machine guns. They were all shelling the holy out of it, and our guys didn't have anything besides the assault rifles. Nothing at all, not even mentioning shoulder-fired SAMs or anything like that. So they tore us to pieces for sure, put us through hell, and the Yankees knew for sure that the Russians were coming. That it was us Russians. Our guys were going to commandeer an oil refinery, and the Yankees were holding it. We got our ass beat rough. My man called me, they're there drinking now. Many have gone missing. It's a total up, it sucks. Another takedown. Everybody, you know, treats us like pieces of They beat our ass like we were little pieces of but our government will go in reverse now, and nobody will respond or anything, and nobody will punish anyone for this.
Both Russian and Syrian sides were angry about what happened, but the Americans could not be blamed because they had talked to the Russians about it. Intercepted phone calls even suggested that the attack was ordered by Moscow for the Wagner Group fighters. Interestingly, when Syrian and Russian fighters came back about a month later, the Americans called the Russian commander again. After the call, the Russian-Syrian force left quickly.